What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by Robert Cessna. It is Thanksgiving Eve, and Cease, we are 3 days away from the return of the game that everybody has been looking forward to for months and years. It's the Aggies and Longhorns at Kyle Field, 6:30 p.m. for a spot in the SEC championship game. Does it get any bigger than this?
Well, no, because once again, when you consider how long they've been not playing, and then to come back with the stakes as high as they are, no one could have really dreamt this when they stopped playing in 2011 to get to be this far, because quite honest, I didn't think it would take that long. Then at one point, I didn't think, when are they going to come back? And then all of a sudden, everything happens quickly a little bit these days in college football, particularly SEC, and then it's coming back, and then bang, now it's here.
I was thinking about it earlier today, and it was like, they could have played each other in a non-conference series, probably. They could have finagled a way to make it happen. I know they didn't do it for a litany of reasons. Could have played in a bowl game.
Yep.
Might have been the Texas Bowl. But it seems it's just different that this is how the game returns with Texas in the SEC. There's so much at stake. Like, the stakes have hardly ever been higher in this particular game. There's been seasons the Aggies have been really good, and there's been seasons the Longhorns have been really good, but they've never been good at the same time very often. And what a way to actually bring it back when they're playing for something big.
Yeah, the only thing is it's A&M stumbled a little bit at the end here. And, of course, the game actually maybe, it's ludicrous to say, means a little bit more for them, because Texas, if they lose, they're still going to go. But that doesn't really matter. Once they get on the field, it's A&M and Texas for the first time in 13 years. So you think about, I don't think any of us saw the game would be this magnitude, just because when you look at the SEC with Georgia, with Alabama, with all these teams that dominated, there's no way, at least I thought, it was going to get down to A&M and Texas before it would matter for both, because I think most people just had a given that Georgia would be good, Alabama would be good.
People thought Ole Miss, Missouri, and LSU would be better than A&M.
And so then you get in this situation where the two best teams by far a few weeks ago was A&M and Texas, and A&M stumbled a little bit. But what a way to come back. And I think now that it's here, I still don't think it's going to really sink in until you walk into that stadium and then you see what it's like, and then the kickoff happens and you think about what's at stake for the first time in 13 years. I think it's going to be a little mind-boggling to all of us.
Well, Texas is by far the favorite. A&M is definitely the underdog in this game. The Horns are 10-1. The Aggies are 8-3. A&M's, like you said, stubbed its toe the last couple games in conference play, at least. I know they had the New Mexico State game sandwiched between the losses at South Carolina and Auburn. When you look at this game on paper, what's the biggest thing that jumps out to you that A&M's got to do to beat Texas if they're going to have a chance to pull the upset?
Well, they just got to stay close, because you look at what's happened just recently. The home field advantage means so much anymore, and never more so than the SEC, when you see that, Ole Miss had to go into Florida, and, 3 weeks ago that looked like a sure win, and they lose.
The Florida fans wanted to hire Lane Kiffin earlier this year and fire Napier.
And then Oklahoma, they wanted to fire Venables. I mean, they're absolutely horrible. I saw some games where they just gave the game away to Missouri, and yet they dominate Alabama and beat them to knock them out of the chance to be 1 or 2 in the conference. You look at how things have happened. There's 16 teams in the SEC, and A&M and Texas are playing for the lead. You think about, and they only play 8 games. It's not like they play even 9. So it's very mind-boggling. It's almost like, we're getting back to a little bit the bonfire game. This is like divine intervention. A&M in Texas is playing for it. I mean, it's quite remarkable as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know. I'd be like a coach. I don't know if I answered your question, but I think the number one thing is the home field advantage, and that's worth to me any more, maybe 7 or 10 points.
Yeah, think about A&M, right? South Carolina on the road. A&M was the favorite. The Gamecocks jumped on them early, and that they really fed off of that crowd. Same at Auburn. Remember, we had, on the teleconference last week, I asked Hugh Freeze what it was like for Auburn to finally play a conference night game, and he was like, hey, if we can just get this to the fourth quarter, let's see what happens. And that's exactly what transpired at Jordan-Hare Stadium last Saturday. The intangibles, I think, really swing in A&M's favor in a rivalry game. That means a lot because you can throw talent and statistics out the window many times.
Well, you hit on a couple of things. Number one, a rivalry. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen in a rivalry. And we've seen it over the years, those of us a little bit older, the A&M and Texas rivalry, just wild things happen. But, you take the SEC where football just means more, and you go back to last week, sometimes, it's hard to see on television exactly what the crowd can do. But when we had trouble even getting into the Auburn Stadium, a 4-6 Auburn team that had 88,000 people there that were just made a huge difference, and I give them all the credit in the world because I figured, okay, maybe they'll have 80,000 there, but they were in the game from the start, and they helped will Auburn to a huge victory. And in the SEC, it just does mean more. You had to be there to me, and heck, we had a rough time just getting in the stadium. There was more people outside watching the team go in that are in a lot of lower FBS teams, attend it. It was mind-boggling, and you've got to, and people get it. They go to A&M here every week for games, and I understand. But it's that same way on the road, and that's why it's tough to win.
That place was awesome last Saturday.
Yeah,
There's no doubt about it. Looking on the field, though, because, A&M might have the intangibles, but when you look at talent and you look at statistics, Texas across the board holds the edge in almost every category. What do you see from the Longhorns and how A&M might match up against them?
Well, it's still early looking at it, but first thing jumps out is their defense. I mean, I always look to defense because they can't score. They're not going to win. I don't care who the team is. And when I see how good they are on defense, and A&M has had some struggles on offense lately. Let's be honest, they're a different team. Since they lost one of their stud running backs, it was nice when they have the 1-2 punch back there. But now that they only have the one punch back there, you still have a very talented quarterback, but yet he's very young. They've got the experienced quarterback. So while A&M has a huge home field advantage, Texas has some big check marks to go on the road. And they haven't been to A&M, but no, they've been to Arkansas. They've been to Michigan. They've been even a little bit Vanderbilt. They beat Vanderbilt when Vanderbilt was at its height. So they will not be intimidated coming in here. So I think that's the number one thing. How will A&M put points on the board? Because Ewers has had some problems with turnovers, and I think A&M's going to have to get 1 or 2 turnovers. So that's a possibility when you're at home. But when I look, they probably have a little more firepower than A&M, and they've had a little more experience at different places. And but once again, how much is the rivalry worth when you're playing at home?
Yeah, looking at A&M's offense, winning the turnover battle is going to be paramount in this game. Texas is third in the country in turnovers forced, second in interceptions. Marcel Reed has had a costly interception in plus territory in each of the last 2 losses. His ability to protect the football is going to be so critical facing what is a very talented Texas secondary. And so the good news for A&M, though, is that the passing game has taken some steps forward the last few weeks. And Elko said that last week was, he thought, their best performance collectively. And you saw a guy like Noah Thomas get kind of a breakthrough game. You know, he had the contested touchdown catch. He had the catch and run for the long touchdown. A&M's going to have him and a guy like Jabri Barber and even a guy like Ja'Day Walker, who made a tough touchdown catch and run in overtime, to be able to keep up with Texas throughout this game. And Marcel Reed's going to have to protect the ball at all costs.
Reed's going to have to protect the ball. They're going to have to use his legs because really, to me, they're down to one running back. I mean, I hate to say it is. So I think we saw that last week. Longest run by a tail running back was 9 yards against Auburn, who is not a great defense. So I'm kind of worried about how A&M is going to move the ball because I think Texas is going to make A&M one-dimensional. And it's not a bad deal because, once again, Marcel Reed is electric, but I think he's going to have to be electric in this game.
And even if Reuben Owens, by some miracle, is able to play, I don't think A&M's going to be able to bank on him to be an X-factor guy coming in his first game in the season, if he's even able to play, which is a huge question mark. We'll see what the SEC availability report shows tonight, but he will play in a very limited capacity, I would expect, if he's even able to go at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even factoring him in because until I see him out there in game conditions, and then let's be honest, you go back, he had a couple fumble issues when he was playing well. You know, coming in your first game, if that would be against Texas, you know, in this situation, I don't know if that would be the greatest situation to break him in. When you look at those things, this game could hinge on a turnover, and you worry about the emotions. How's A&M going to do it? I mean, their offenses, to me, has been a little bit, it's been tough when you look at the last few games. And then you look at defense. They gave up too many yards against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, when it came in, they only had scored like more than, I'll get my, look at the last game. They had scored more than 20 points, Auburn, really, in any decent game. And they were able to score points that go over the top. So A&M's got to turn things around. The last two games against SEC teams, they haven't played well. But, I get it. At home, they play so well at home. But we saw they even let up the foot, so to speak, against New Mexico State. I thought they should have beat them worse than what they did. But it's a rivalry game. It's so hard to pick rivalry games because of the emotion.
Well, on the defensive side, something that was very telling, what Mike Elko said Monday, was the most disappointing aspect he thinks is the number of times A&M has been unable to finish taking down the quarterback for a sack. And he said it's at least 15 times this season. And that number has probably been inflated in the last few games. Look, A&M's got a very talented defensive line. We've known that, but they have struggled to really make a difference on that side of the ball. And when you look at it, Texas, they've got an incredible offensive line led by Kelvin Banks at left tackle. This is going to probably be Nick Scorton's last game at Kyle Field. We all expect him to go to the NFL this season, and what a great story. But if he's going to go out on a high note, he's going to need to make a difference coming off the game. I don't even think he got a tackle against Auburn.
Nick Scorton didn't have a tackle last week. I think that was one of the most amazing things because he is such a difference maker. And then you put him and Turner up there in the defensive line. You've got two NFL players that might play as rookies.
And Shamar Stewart.
And A&M just hasn't got the results out of that deal. And why is that? And Elko's quick to say that, it's a team effort. You can't just blame the D-line, and I get that. And the problem is the defense is going to have to play their best game of the year because I feel when you look at the numbers, if Ewers comes in and he's hot or whatever, A&M's going to have problems because he is a big-time quarterback with a lot of experience. And, you worry about somebody with experience and not being able to rattle them because I was kind of surprised A&M wasn't able to rattle, Auburn offense last year but I will say this, go back and look at the stats. 2 years ago, when Auburn come here, quarterback was 6 for 12 for 44 yards. He throws for like 300 yards down there. It's tough to come into Kyle Field, so we'll see what Ewers does here at Kyle Field. It's a little different shoe you're wearing.
Something that's going to be interesting, too, is how does A&M's secondary maybe limit the big play against Texas? We know what Texas's wideouts are able to do. Even that tight end, Gunnar Helm. I mean, he is a real weapon there at tight end. And the good news for the Aggies is that Mike Elko said that Will Lee and Jaden Hill are going to probably be good to go this weekend. That's good news. A&M's going to get its best cover guy. And you think about it, the two passing teams that A&M's played this year, Missouri and LSU, A&M had Missouri's number, there's no doubt about that. And once they started to figure out Nussmeier and took away the run, they really started to put it on the Tigers. A&M's going to have to follow a similar mold against Texas, in my opinion, to really hinder that Texas offense and really affect Ewers, who's not really a runner, like you said. And look, Texas has been skating on ice, I think, all season with their running back situation. You know, that was a big thing before the season, was that they were only down to 2 scholarship running backs, and credit to Texas, they've made it work, and it's been a remarkable effort from Jaden Blue and Trey Weissner, the true freshman from DeSoto. But if you're A&M, you got to take away the run, and you got to pressure Ewers, and you can't give up the big play. That to me is the formula to win if you're A&M's defense.
Yeah, and I think Ewers is proven he can get hot. You got to worry about him, and I'm with you 100%. But then I'm also concerned. I think A&M was only able to get 2 sacks last week. Wasn't able to put a lot of pressure, and I know Texas is a lot better offensive line to hold him up. Have a lot better receivers, and that's not downgrading because Auburn has some decent receivers. But we don't know the hidden factor is the rivalry. Who's going to show up? There's always, people show up for a rival. A rivalry game is bigger. Is Marcel Reed going to come of age? Is Ewers going to go out in a blaze of glory, so to speak? And, of course, A&M has the home field advantage. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But do you use it? Because they didn't use that early against LSU. LSU was the better team, but then they got to Nussmeier, and he got in his head, and he was worthless. I mean, he couldn't do anything. And Ewers has had a few of those games like that. Can A&M's defense do it? Who's going to start out hot? And A&M started out slow lately. I'm talking about the games that matter against LSU. They started out slow against Auburn. They can't start out slow against Texas. They got to be ready to go because you worry if they get in. Can A&M score more than 22 points if they had to? I don't know.
Another intriguing matchup that I've got my eye on, Anthony Hill versus Torian York. Kind of related guys in a way for A&M. Once Hill flipped his commitment to Texas, the Aggies pursued York out of Temple High, got him to flip his commitment from Baylor late in the game. You got the former 5-star guy that is having an All-American type season against A&M's blue chip guy that has had a phenomenal just story in general. York plays with a chip on his shoulder for sure. Texas never offered him. He mentioned this week how they flew the helicopter over to his school but never talked to him. And all eyes are going to be on Hill in York. I'm curious to see who has a better performance in this game. And if you're A&M, some of these bigger games that A&M's had, you think about in 21 when they beat Alabama, Will Anderson was very ineffective at linebacker going against Reuben Fothery. And then the next year when A&M upset LSU when they were on their way to the SEC title game, Harold Perkins, who was the big, hoorah guy, he didn't do a whole lot against the Aggies when Devon A-Chain ran wild.
Well, to me, York's been up and down a little bit. I mean, you like what you see from him. He's got a lot of energy. He has overachieved, without a doubt. But, man, Hill's having a great year.
He really is.
He's had no, he's not had any bad games. He's been very steady. And once again but it's been a long time since we've said this. In rivalries, a lot of times it's the unknown person comes out. Who comes out? You got to have your studs. Your studs got to show up. Nick Scorton can't have 0 tackles. I mean, he can't have 0 pressures. I mean, he's got to make a difference. If he doesn't step up, Shamir Turner, if those guys don't step up, your big guys have to have games. And let's be honest, A&M's, Texas lost all their running backs early. Well, as it's going on, A&M's had losses in the offensive line. Now, got a guy back last week, obviously. How much is he going to be healthier? Is their line better? How do you make up When you miss one of your stud running backs, A&M's going to have to find ways. We saw a little bit, move guys in the backfield, give them a few more deals. Will they be able to do that again? I think a lot of it's going to be who can surprise the other team, who's going to be able to do something. Like A&M called the perfect play down to the goal line to tie the game against Auburn, but then they didn't execute it.
Man, that was a great 2-point play.
I'm just saying, sometimes you got to have a little bit of luck, and you hate to say it, is who's going to make their own luck.
Well, in the Prague, you picked Texas, I picked A&M. Mm-hmm. So before we end this, why do you feel like the Longhorns are going to be able to pull this out? And I'll share why I think I picked A&M.
I think Texas has too much experience and talent, but they have the experience at quarterback. They have a really good defense. When I look, how's A&M going to be able to score points? Ewers has been in a lot of big games. I like their defense. It's going to be tough for A&M to move the ball. Yes, A&M's got the home field advantage. Right now, they've been about a 5.5 point underdog or somewhere like that. So that's telling me if it was in a neutral site, it'd be about a 12-point Texas. Texas hasn't been in an environment like A&M. That's the kicker there. Ewers has had bad games before, and if somebody can get prize. Unfortunately, A&M hasn't played well their last couple of games. They've been on a little bit of a slump. They hit that peak against LSU. Now, can they match it? And sometimes, I hate to say it, we've seen it at Kyle Field. Sometimes the crowd, to me, spurs the opposing team. I use Ole Miss as a perfect example. I think Ole Miss sometimes fed off the crowd here, and sometimes, sometimes A&M, I feel, doesn't use their home field advantage to the way they should.
Well,
your thoughts?
My pick on A&M was pretty straight up. I feel like just the intangibles are the difference, and I feel like A&M's ability playing at home is the difference in this game. And for once, A&M messed up last week with no margin for error, and then somehow still has a chance to make it. When has that ever happened? That has never happened. And especially, who was the team that gifted it to them? It was Alabama. When has Alabama messed up and helped A&M? So, to me, just the intangibles and the oddity of it and the feeling, that to me is what's going to propel A&M forward. I'm encouraged by Reed's progression. If they get down 21-0 against Texas, though, there's no chance they're coming back. Texas is too good of a team to let A&M come back in a lead like that. But I do think that the home crowd and A&M's ability to feed off of that themselves, I think that's going to propel them to a victory on Saturday, is why I picked A&M to win.
Well,
but if Texas won, I wouldn't be shocked.
Well, you go back, I think the last time Texas was here, A&M jumped out to like a
14-0 lead.
13 or 14-0 lead. And rivalry games, you just don't know when you go back. And, of course, unfortunately, that year A&M blew large leads all year long.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that. I'd be kind of surprised. I'll be interested to see if anybody got a large lead just because we've seen A&M wipe it out a couple times. When you think about it, A&M did that twice. They silenced the crowd really last week. They silenced the crowd at South Carolina and didn't finish it off. And once again, that's the new football I like to say that we're in. I mean, it's all about right now. And, it's hard to believe how much is at stake. And I think we can sit here and talk for hours. I don't know how a lot of those kids are going to handle that. They've never been in this kind of pressure on both sides. I mean, the rivalry is back. It hasn't been since 2011. Like York, he goes, I was 9. You don't remember anything about it. But when they walk on that field, they're going to – I don't think any of us are going to understand the enormity of it. There's going to be like 105, 106,000 people here.
There might be more than that.
And they're going to be unbelievable. Every play is going to be magnified. And you don't know how those teams are going to react to that,
Well, we've gotten to talk with some very esteemed former A&M players and coaches and current A&M players and coaches the last few weeks leading up to this game. What's maybe an anecdote that someone, has recalled or said to you that you're like, man, this defines the rivalry, or, what do you think this game, means to you, having been able to cover it so many years, Cease?
Well, the game lasts longer than 60 minutes. I mean, think about how long. I'll always remember Mike Sherman down in that one knee at that game watching Justin Tucker's field goal. And, that was like 13 years ago. And it was like Sherman knew his time at A&M was over. I mean, it was like that was the last dagger. And then you go back to the bonfire game, whatever, with A&M Texas. A&M Texas need to be playing. And we need to remember it is just a game, but no, it's more than a game. There's people paying $700, $800 just for the tickets. That doesn't mean there's rooms gone for $1,000. I mean, this game is so huge, the return. It'll never be like this again, the return, because they're in a 16-team conference. There's no guarantee next year, even within 5 years, that they're going to be in this position playing for it, because we just said there was 88,000 at an Auburn to watch a 4-6 Auburn team. I mean, it's like this is the big leagues, baby, and it doesn't get any bigger than A&M and Texas, and it's just phenomenal. I'm just thankful to be here, and it's only a game, but yet it's a way of life. I mean, think about all the Longhorns around town that or whatever. And the good thing is it's a friendly rivalry. I mean, you can say what you want to, and Zune had some funny things, but it's not life and death. It's still sport, but by gosh, it's close to life and death.
Well, hey, we have so much content on theeagle.com. We're going to have more leading up to Saturday's game, so be sure to check our website for all of our coverage leading up to the renewal of the rivalry. Cease, thanks for the recall. It's always a good one.
Well, it's like I've waited a long time for this. And then, let's be honest. You watch that game, and that was such a great game on top of the bonfire game before that. When you think about that, then the last game, Sherman knew he was done. Mac Brown, basically got fired yesterday. You think about what a rivalry. Everybody needs a rivalry. LSU is not A&M's rivalry. Everybody needs a good, healthy rivalry. And when I saw the pictures of those kids out, everybody waiting for tickets, those kids were 9, you laugh when York, he laughed. He goes, he was 9 like the last time they played. Come on, at 9 years old, I probably couldn't find the backyard sometimes. I mean, it's amazing what's going to be on the line on Saturday. I mean, it's only a game, but this is Texas, the state of Texas.
Football's king.
It's a way of life. It's a way of life, and we're going to enjoy. We're going to enjoy life on Saturday night, but one side's going to enjoy it a lot more come the end.
Faith, family, and football. Woo. Not always in that order. Woo. So, hey, we'll be there Saturday. Be sure to check theeagle.com. We'll see you next week on the My Nation Podcast.